right, let's get settled in, please. All right, folks, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the October 23rd, 2023 regular monthly meeting of the RTM of the town of Fairfield, our final meeting of this session. Can the clerk please take the roll?
Ed Bateson. Wendy Fury. Melissa Longo. Amy Ruggiero. Bill Gerber, he's here. Karen McCormick. Cindy Perm. Jeff Steele. Alex Durrell.
Here.
Jeff Galdenzi. Tom Lambert. Sharon Pistilli. Laura Carson. Michelle McCabe. Marcy Spalier. Liz Asma. Jennifer Barahona. Josh Garskoff. Joe Siebert. Jay Walk. Steve Barretts. Hannah Gale. Andy Graseffa. Lisa Havey. John Kuhn. Mark McDermott. Jill Vergara. Karen Wackerman. Here. Cameron Chiniski. Hank Ferentz. Jim Myers. Nick Marabli. Christine Brown. Drew Georgiadis. Margaret Horton. Kelly Sinto. Ken Estorita. Peter Britton. Brooke Sparacino. Story Tallman. Here.
Thank you, Betsy. Can we all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the Thank you. We'll go on to item number 2, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on September 18th, 2023. Can I have a motion to approve? Representative Pistilli, seconded by Representative Parham. Any comments, questions, changes? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Garskoff. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3, we're going to have an update from the Energy Committee. Representative Chairman John Kuhn.
All right, from the child seat. This is a quick update, more to come in months ahead. First off, I want to thank and acknowledge the other members and co-members of the committee. Peter Britton, my vice chair, who like me is from West Hartford, and I think that has given us a very common ground from which we've been working and found some different ideas. Michelle McCabe, the secretary, who has done probably the best job of keeping me from going off on chasing wild geese and, you know, the next shiny thing. And Bill Gerber, he was instrumental in pushing me to form this committee early on, and without him, it might not have happened. And also Jeff Steele. When the committee was approved, we were charged with reporting back to the body with an update, so that's what this is. We've had 2 meetings thus far. The first meeting was with Peter Millman, who's played a leading role in pursuing CCA. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And Mark Sassy of Bridge Energy. This meeting focused on sort of bigger picture topics. People may recall that I formed this committee in one purpose for community energy aggregation, CCA. And you may recall that basically what that is having the town act as purchaser for the utilities for all of the residents. And they can do that at a much better rate for a variety of reasons, but it would offer real savings to the town residents. We do not have enabling legislation yet at the state level. That is something that we need to work on. We are a deregulated state, which allows us to have this happen. There are 14 other states that have it, and there are plenty of good models. And Peter and Mark have been very helpful in guiding me in what we can do as a town to be prepared for this, or even to help them in trying to get the legislation passed at the state level. Sorry, my son's calling me. We also, I also wanted to say that Peter and West Hartford's energy manager, who I'll get back to in a moment, Catherine Deviney, who I spoke with, among others, were the ones who noted how unique this committee was as a legislative body. I thought that having them as part of the meeting would be a great kickoff. And 3 things came from that. CCA, as I talked about, network geothermal. Framingham, Massachusetts has a program going with Eversource Energy. And it's a pilot program there, and the town is not paying for it. The ratepayers are paying for it through Eversource. And this, I think, is something that could be very interesting for our town in terms of the HVAC needs that we have with all the schools. So stay tuned for that one. We also discussed microgrids, but we weren't able to get into a ton of detail on that. And I had mentioned the West Hartford energy manager, and we discussed her a little bit in her role and how she helped save West Hartford's municipal energy expenses over 20% in her tenure. Our second meeting was with the Sustainable Fairfield folks, with Mary Hogue and Bob Wall. And during that meeting, we talked about different ways that we could complement each other. And they were asked about the need for a committee such as ours. And in talking with them, we all felt that there's a clear role for the RTM and its ability to craft ordinances to be a partner in the work of Sustainable Fairfield. We discussed how the town purchases its energy through a consultant that results in substantial savings. Effectively, the town, the municipal purchases are done as community energy aggregation. And we also talked about the energy monitoring that Sustainable Fairfield helps the town with, including school-by-school analysis that shows some of Fairfield schools are basically flunking efficiency at an 18 out of 100 score. The resumption of solar on town buildings, which I think last meeting we heard we're actually doing again, that's great, and some other topics as well. In all of this, we realized many ways we can work together to complement each other. So these 2 initial meetings showed committee that there's a lot of opportunity to save taxpayer money through many initiatives, both direct and indirect, through the big things like CCA and simple things like general education about such things as energy home audits. Our next steps would involve things like an inventory of existing town energy programs and initiatives, further benchmarking with other towns like West Hartford, discussions with people like Brian Garcia at the Connecticut Green Bank, exploring an energy manager position like West Hartford, and deeper coordination with people like Sustainable Fairfield. The committee is convinced lots of opportunities exist after only 2 meetings, and believe others will be uncovered as we continue our collaborative work. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from Mr. Kuhn? Thank you, John. Okay, moving along to item number 4, to hear, consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Whereas on June 27, 2022, the RTM. Do I have a second to waive the reading? Representative Zesma. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're waiving the reading. So we do have Mr. Bodie, I think, is online, right? Do we have any? And Christine's here? Great, okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
We did hear this last week, so I know there were quite a few members that weren't in attendance. So if there are any other questions on this item from the body, we'd like them now. Okay, any comments from the public? Nope. Well, thank you for coming. You got a couple more, yeah. Yeah,
Item 5.
item 5, she's. Good, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item number 5, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that in accordance with the recommendation from the WPCA, funding of up to $235,000 from the WPCA fund balance for quality-based selection QBS of a design consultant for Toll House, Mill River, Eastfield, and Willow Street pump stations and force mains. Investigation Phase 2, be and hereby is approved. I have a motion to approve. Representative Siebert, seconded by Representative Vergara. Any questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the body. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously. And we have item number 6. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that the bond resolution entitled "A Resolution Appropriating $6,286,480 for the cost of roof replacement projects at Holland Hill Elementary School and North Stratfield Elementary School, and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, be and hereby is approved." Do I have a motion to approve? Representative Woke, second by Representative Gale. Angeles, you're here. We did hear this last week. Do we have any questions from the body on this item? Seeing none, I'll take that to the public. Any questions from the public? Okay, nope. We'll take it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Stay there, Angus, because you're 7 and 8, right? Item number 7, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that the Town of Fairfield authorizes the Board of Education of the Town of Fairfield to apply to the Commissioner of Administrative Services and to accept or reject a grant for the Holland Hill partial roof replacement project at Holland Hill Elementary School, and further resolved that the Holland Hill Elementary School Roof Building Committee is hereby established as the building committee with regard to the Holland Hill partial roof replacement project at Holland Hill Elementary School, and further resolved that the Town of Fairfield hereby authorizes at least the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the Holland Hill partial roof replacement project at Holland Hill Elementary School. That's a lot of Holland Hills. Do I have a motion to approve? Representative Goskoff, second by Representative Carlson. Any questions on this project for Angeles? Okay, seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll take this to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That item carries unanimously. Item number 8, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that the Town of Fairfield authorizes the Board of Education of the Town of Fairfield to apply to the Commissioner of Administrative Services and to accept or reject a grant for the North Stratfield roof replacement project at North Stratfield Elementary School, And further resolved that the North Stratfield Elementary School Roof Building Committee is hereby established as a building committee with regard to the North Stratfield roof replacement project at North Stratfield Elementary School. And further resolved that the town of Fairfield hereby authorizes at least the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for North Stratfield roof replacement project at North Stratfield Elementary School. Motion to approve, Representative Brown, second by Representative Gar. Any questions for Mr. Papageorge? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll take that to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That item carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Papageorge, for coming tonight. Sorry we dragged you.
Thank you all.
Okay, item number 9, to hear, consider, and act upon a safe and livable streets ordinance sponsored by Bill Gerber, District 2, Representative. Motion to waive the reading, seconded by Representative Pistilli. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that carries. So, Representative Gerber, you're in the seat. We do have to make a motion. Representative Spoyer, seconded by Representative Paulson.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give a quick recap. We have a complete streets policy. It was endorsed by the Board of Selectmen in 2018. It has not been followed. I'm not sure how closely people have read it. Our town engineer always thought that it was applicable only to major improvement projects. But if you read it, you'll see it's applicable to maintenance projects as well, including street paving. If you look on page 6 of the policy, it includes the following: new construction projects within the town's roadway, maintenance projects except as indicated in section, clear accountable exceptions, projects involving the reconstruction of transportation infrastructure, and prioritization of project selection. These are the things that we're supposed to be applying complete streets to, and this is not currently happening. It requires consideration of complete streets investments when planning projects. While there may happen to be behind the scenes planning, but it's not transparent because the process outlined in the policy hasn't been applied. The policy calls for documentation of exceptions, but that hasn't been applied either, or at least not in a systematic and public way. I think we have a great asset in our engineering group. Bill Hurley is accessible, works really hard. What this ordinance does is put a structure around the process of evaluating and implementing investments in street safety. It requires the development of complete streets plan. We have a long-term capital plan in Fairfield. This ordinance requires a plan for complete streets that will mirror that process. It's a core function of finance to be able to combine and break out numbers for presentation, and complete streets projects can be part of the town waterfall, and they are part of the town waterfall starting this year apparently, but it can be broken out in a separate presentation. It requires a complete streets coordinator, someone who lives and breathes street safety, has the credentials to understand the options to improve street safety, has the organizational skills and maturity to interact with the public, other departments like TPZ, Police Commission, DPW, state agencies, etc. This ordinance does not dictate who that position reports to. As I mentioned last week, it makes most sense, in my opinion, for this person to report to the town engineer, but that's just my opinion. We often provide discretion. There's a lot of discretion in this ordinance for the administration. It requires a right-of-way manual. I know the town of Fairfield must follow a manual on uniform traffic control devices, or MUTCD guidelines. But the reason many towns are developing complete streets manuals is to tailor the whole universe of what is possible to what is acceptable in our town, or in any given town that develops a manual. It allows contractors to understand what the standard is in Fairfield and allow residents to understand the universe of what can be considered for a specific problem. Residents often ask for stop signs. They go through a process to get a stop sign, only to be told at some point that it's not really the most appropriate thing, but that could take a lot of time. It's all they know. They spend months and months lobbying for a stop sign. Now, hopefully with a right-of-way manual, they'll understand the universe of appropriate street infrastructure. It requires a review and assessment coordinated by the Complete Streets Coordinator of planned street improvement projects, including paving projects. It does not require going out and assessing every street in town all at once. This plan gets implemented over time because our street improvements, including paving, occurs over time. From the public's perspective, the process for implementing street safety improvements is somewhat of a black box. The Complete Streets policy has a section dedicated to exceptions. Policy page 7, this policy requires transportation planners to consider all users at the onset of transportation projects, but it gives clear, accountable exceptions, and there are 4 of them. This ordinance requires a transparent exception process and relies on these clear, accountable exceptions. But it also allows residents to see and provide public comment on those exceptions to make sure that they make sense to the public. Like the town capital planning process and waterfall, projects are to be done during the next fiscal year become part of the budget. Similarly, and part of this process, this ordinance requires the budget for complete streets to be transparent. So I'm going to go through, there are some amendments that I have made, we have made in response to some of the questions that have been raised. I'm going to go through them now.
Making a motion to amend?
Motion to amend the Complete Streets, Complete and Livable Streets policy, safe and livable streets.
Seconded by Representative Bastilli. So I'm going to start. The first amendment I would like to make is, and I don't know if I can do throughout the whole document, I've used the abbreviation CON-DOT for the Connecticut Department of Transportation, but that should be CT-DOT, CT-DOT. So that's under the whereas clauses initially, but it's in several other places. Under definitions, 1, definitions. B, included Complete Streets plan, because that was originally embedded in the document itself, but was not part of the definitions. And I think that this makes it clearer and easier to understand. So what we've amended it to is a Complete Streets plan means the long-term capital plan for the town as it pertains to complete streets, developed in accordance with the right-of-way manual and consistent with the Complete Streets policy. C, changed adopted to endorsed, because that's what it is. It was not officially adopted, it was endorsed. And scratched to be amended from time to time, because that's beyond the scope of this document. I'm sorry, new E. No, actually E. I had originally put in
the authority to amend to grant exceptions as being the bike ped committee. And when I met with the police chief and his staff and the police commissioner, they were concerned of putting an extra step with an extra commission or committee involved. And so I originally changed that. I thought I was being smart to just change the definition of the Complete Streets Commission to the LTA, the Local Traffic Authority. But I think that caused confusion. I think it's much cleaner to just call it the Local Traffic Authority, and put in a definition. The Local Traffic Authority, LTA, means Fairfield's local traffic authority, which is responsible for approving aspects of complete streets as described in this ordinance. So moving on to H, purpose, goals. This ordinance is meant to achieve the following. I've deleted I, which is, should I read it, or does everyone have this in front of them?
You skip page 5, implementation, 3A, under 3A.
I'm sorry, but 2 H is, I is deleted because that was redundant. 3A, I got feedback that I should be specific in that the qualifications for this position of Complete Streets coordinator should spell out that it could be a civil or professional engineer. And so that's what's been inserted. I'm sorry?
It's 3A.
3A. Implementation. We're now on F. I got feedback that from several people that monthly seemed excessive for the updates, and that it should be quarterly. And so that's what I made. I would say here that anywhere where Complete Streets Commission is now LTA for Local Traffic Authority. A right-of-way manual. There was some concern that this position looked like someone all-knowing and powerful. That's not the intent. The intent is that this is a person who reports to someone, a director of a department. So I made it clear, I think I made it clear by changing by the Complete Streets Coordinator to under the coordination of the Complete Streets Coordinator. I've added before Vision Zero that the right-of-way manual is prepared in accordance with the Complete Streets policy and Vision Zero of Connecticut, Vision Zero Council of Connecticut, and other relevant guidelines. B, I deleted performance before metrics and deleted required to implement because honestly that it's not required and it didn't make sense to have that word there. G, I deleted that. That was also really redundant because we have already discussed that above and in the definitions. C, I just changed the word budget to cost. Budget sounded like a little too formal. Cost is just, you know, what the expected cost is. And I deleted the Complete Streets plan because that's now defined in the definition section. CA, The Complete Streets Plan must be consistent with the Complete Streets Policy and right-of-way manual. That is redundant. Doesn't need to be there and may be confusing. C, deleted when updating or revising the Complete Streets Plan, the town to review current design standards, et cetera, because that is part of the right-of-way manual and does not have to be repeated here for another. I mean, the plan has to be done in accordance with the right-of-way manual, so we don't need this section. 3A. 3A, I think I already went through this. Okay. So I think I'm on F. Private development projects will be done in accordance with the right-of-way manual and Complete Streets Policy. This right-of-way manual is the guiding and this was a comment I received from, I think on the last week, that it really is the right-of-way manual that people will be following, and that will be updated from time to time as required. Exceptions, A. The town recognizes under certain circumstances it may not be feasible or practical to implement one or more elements of the originally said Complete Streets Policy. It really makes much more sense to say the right-of-way manual. That is the robust manual with different options and elements for complete streets. And for an exception, exception is made by the town. The town is the petitioner for an exception. It goes to the LTA. And hopefully that is clear. I know that was, people were wondering, is the engineering department trying to get an exception from the engineering department? Well, no, it's the engineering department is and was under the Complete Streets Policy. The engineering department was always the department meant to ask for or document in the policy. It was meant to document exceptions. Here it is the engineering department that documents exceptions, but has to get approval for the exception from the LTA, and that then provides opportunity for the public to understand that there's a decision not to make safety enhancements while paving or doing other improvements, but the public has an opportunity to make public comment on that. D, exceptions may include but not limited to the following: clear accountable sections that are already outlined in the Complete Streets Policy. So I think that's easier to understand. You can refer to what's already there in the Complete Streets Policy. So I deleted old A, put in clear accountable exceptions outlined in the Complete Streets Policy. E, owners of private streets, they can encouraged to adhere to the right-of-way manual and Complete Streets Policy. 5, reporting. The town attorney was worried about the legality of requiring a joint meeting in an ordinance and felt that was unprecedented. So I took out joint meeting, and so we can always call a joint meeting, or the administration can call a joint meeting, but the way it's written, it would be separate meetings. The Complete Streets Policy is scratched as updated from time to time, and not within the purview of this ordinance. C, there was some concern about putting in the requirement for certain things like satisfaction levels and the possible expense associated with determining that. I just wanted to make sure that that was not a sticking point, so I just put in as appropriate and practical evaluation. A effective date. This was a really good comment from the town attorney last week. This ordinance takes effect upon adoption. It creates some logistical problems because really it's the right-of-way manual that has to be completed first before some other things happen. So I think I solved that by this ordinance shall take effect upon adoption, and all sections contingent upon completion of the right-of-way manual shall take effect upon its completion. Appendix 1, originally the Bike and Pedestrian Committee was in there as the Complete Streets Commission, but because of some of the changes, that we talked about earlier, that ended up coming out, so I just put that back in. And really, that is it.
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Questions from the body on the amendments proposed? For Mr. Gerber, or whoever you might have a question for. Well, Representative McCormick. And his questions are on the amendments.
Karen McCormick, District 2. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the town attorney. When we were here last week, I believe I heard you indicate that based upon your initial reading of the proposed ordinance, that you did not have at that time that you sat here in the committee meeting enough time to review the ordinance and do a proper analysis of the ordinance based upon when it was given to you. Since last week, and based upon these amendments, do you have any opinion as you sit here tonight as to whether or not you have sufficient information to advise or speak to the ordinance as it's been amended tonight?
Mr. Baldwin?
I can tell you that I appreciate the changes that Representative Gerber has made to the version that's been amended and presented just now by him. I received it at around 4 o'clock this afternoon. I have gone through it, and I do have several questions which I think should be addressed, including timing, some inconsistencies, for example, in the applicability of the ordinance to private developments with the right of someone to petition for an exception, which is only to be done by the town. Those are just some examples of questions that were brought to my attention upon that initial review this afternoon. And I have others, but I don't know last week, Representative Gerber and I had what I think was a very healthy exchange of ideas and discussed the ordinance as he envisioned it. And I learned a lot from that discussion. And I would benefit from a similar collaboration with Representative Gerber on these few remaining points that that have been brought to my attention this afternoon.
I believe last week you indicated that you did not believe that the ordinance was ready to, in its form as it was presented to us, that you were not in a position to give an opinion one way or the other as to the condition of the amendment from a legal perspective as to whether or not you had reviewed it, whether or not it was kind of tightened up and in a format that should be enacted for the town. Do you have an opinion this evening after having reviewed those changes or reviewed the ordinance in the past 7 days?
Well, I think most importantly is the version that's before you, which does have many improvements to it. And I think I have an even better idea based on those changes that were made. But that's not to say that I think this is ready, if that's the question. I would like, as I said earlier, I would like to have more time to go through it with Representative Gerber and the other sponsors in order to hash out those issues. For example, the implementation of or the creation of the manual must be done within 12 months, and then the plan must be implemented, if I heard the representative correctly, thereafter. There's no time limit for that either, because once the manual is created, it's a very robust document, and it then must be applied to all the capital street improvement plans that are on the books. And the timing of that is a big question in my head, both operationally, but maybe the DPW director can address that question better than I can. But I don't think you have to be a DPW director to understand that that's a pretty gargantuan task in and of itself.
Between last week and this week, did you and Mr. Gerber have any substantive conversations about the ordinance after the committee meeting?
We did not.
We're talking about the amendments to the policy, so we're either gonna approve the amendments, and then we're gonna vote on the amendments first, and then we can get into.
I understand that, but I think that the proper question is whether or not Mr. Baldwin spoke to Attorney Gerber in the past 7 days about the amendments.
The answer was no, I believe.
Right.
Correct.
And then a point of order was called, so that's the answer. No more questions for Mr. Baldwin.
Okay. Any other questions from the body? Representative Gill.
Hi, Representative Gale, District 6. I have some questions about the right-of-way manual as it's expressed in this ordinance. Obviously, we all want to live in a perfect world where, pedestrians have utmost safety in our town. And I agree, there are a lot of problems with pedestrian safety. But it seems to me that there's going to need to be a lot of prioritization. Obviously, this is, to get the perfect town, we could never afford it. So a series of decisions is going to have to be made for prioritization. And I'm just wondering, should there be, some sort of process for that prioritization written into the ordinance, like maybe, some sort of a consultant or an audit of some kind that could help set these priorities into the right-of-way manual? Because I'm concerned that the manual would, be, list things categorically. And, obviously, we've all seen situations where in good intentions, money is wasted in places where, it's less important than somewhere else. So my question is there the possibility of adding some sort of an audit into this language for preparing this right-of-way manual? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gale. I appreciate that question. And first of all, I would say that our town engineer is an expert on a lot of this stuff, but nothing would preclude him from hiring, a consultant to help with the right-of-way manual. There are, and I think we talked about this a little last week, there are some very robust rights-of-way manuals. There are many robust right-of-way manuals or complete streets manuals, as they may be called, that are available from other towns and cities. And it would really, I think it would be up to him as to whether or not he would want to have someone work on it some or all, and then he would edit it. But, you know, there's a lot of administrative room here in this ordinance to achieve the goal of complete streets. And I kind of feel that putting that into the ordinance may be just a little bit over the line of, you know, micromanaging how you would go about this, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Representative Mirabli?
Yes, Nick Mirabli, District 8. I was listening to the amendment there and taking some notes. It was quite lengthy and there seemed to be a lot of typos in there and a lot of more wordsmithing going on. So I couldn't really get the gist of what the major change was. So Bill, if you could just in your own words briefly tell me what you feel the major change is in that amendment and how it improves this ordinance, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robley. I mean, if someone has a copy printed out, I can give it to him, or if you have your computer, you can check it out. But in general, it was trying to address, you know, some of the confusion over the last week. The main thing was tightening up the language and removing sort of redundancies where references to the policy could have more easily been envisioned and understood as a reference to the right-of-way manual. I mean, those are some of them, and then others are just incorporating comments that have accumulated over the last, you know, weeks. I mean, they're all different, but I mean, I've got a copy here if anyone has printed out a copy for Representative Mirabli or can give him access to their computer. You can go through them. I understand it's a lot to take notes on.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to take this to a vote on the amendments. We're not voting on the ordinance itself yet. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Keep your hands up for Betsy, please. Anybody on WebEx opposed? And one abstention. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to get that forward to where we counting the people on WebEx. Gail, Astorita, who else? Sparcio, Ruggiero.
I don't know if you hear, this is Jeff Steele. I'm abstaining.
We got you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
This is Alex Durrell. I'm abstaining also, please.
We're good, right? Okay. Motion carries, amendments, so now we have the motion on the table to approve the ordinance as amended. So, Representative McCabe, seconded by Representative Georgiadis. And I'm going to open up to questions, comments from the body on the ordinance as amended. Representative McCormick.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, I believe we have a member of the police department who's present this evening. Is it Captain Arizari? Did I say it correctly? Okay. Question for Captain Arizari. First question is, did Mr. Gerber contact the police department prior to, based upon your knowledge, drafting this proposed ordinance?
Captain, you're going to have to come up to the mic, please.
Can you hear me? Yes, he did contact us. It was after the proposed draft was made by Representative Gerber. We sat down and we discussed it with the chief of police.
And based upon those conversations and presumably questions and answers that were reviewed during that meeting or meetings, do you have an opinion as to how this ordinance will impact the police department?
In fairness, it seems a little bit redundant for us from a police department perspective. We currently do have a process for traffic improvement, and our concern that we expressed with Representative Gerber was that we were just adding another layer of bureaucracy, and that would slow the process down for traffic improvements even more. So that was our concern.
Do you know whether or not after you made those comments regarding your concerns, any changes were made to the proposed ordinance to alleviate those concerns or to do away with those concerns on behalf of the police department?
Just from what I heard from the amendments that were made today, I kind of lost track, to be honest with you, because there was a lot of stuff you guys were talking about. So I couldn't tell you in all quite honesty if all of those issues were addressed.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that before tonight, you don't know of any changes that were made to the proposed ordinance that would have alleviated your concerns on the part of the police department. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're unsure, based upon the amendments that were proposed, whether or not those alleviate the concerns of the police department because you had a hard time following those as they were rattled off tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no further questions for you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I believe we have Mr. Marsilio from the Department of Public Works here this evening. And I would ask that he come forward, I suppose, to respond to a couple of questions. It will be brief.
Mr. Marsilio?
Mr. Marsilio, you are the Director of the Department of Public Works for the town of Fairfield, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Interim, if that's important to know, interim, thank you. I'll pose the same question to you. Did you have any contact with Mr. Gerber prior to the ordinance being drafted in connection with this Safe Streets proposed ordinance?
No.
As you sit here today, Mr. Gerber has not reached out to you specifically to sit down to discuss the Safe Streets ordinance that he has drafted and put before the RTM for a vote this evening. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, that's correct.
And do you, is your department responsible for maintaining sidewalks in the town of Fairfield?
Yes.
And can you explain just a little bit about what the process currently is regarding the maintenance and sidewalk improvements and the costs associated with that on an annual basis, if you know?
Well, I know, and it's really on two tracks. Any road that we pave, we incorporate all ADA compliance with the sidewalks, and we repair whatever sidewalks are in disrepair. And that is done to, again, all contiguous sidewalks to the paving program. We've also developed a town-wide assessment through a third-party engineering firm, the same firm that completed our paving program. And we are presently beginning to budget for a 5-year program that would be complementary to the paving program. So any road that gets paved gets ADA ramps and sidewalks addressed. And we are about to embark on a program to rehabilitate sidewalks that are extant. And that program is significant. It's more than $10 million. In terms of new sidewalks, we are presently examining petitions from neighborhood groups to install new sidewalks, and that is in general the way new sidewalk programs get approved and implemented. So there's actually 3 tracks. There's the new sidewalks where sidewalks don't exist. There's a program for rehabilitating sidewalks where they do exist. And there's a program for contiguous sidewalks wherever paving occurs.
You mentioned a $10 million number. Is that an annual figure or over a course of several years?
That would be part of our 5-year program. So it would be a couple $1 million a year. It could be more. These are sidewalks that are in need of being addressed presently. We would do this through triage. We would prioritize any sidewalks within a radius of schools, a certain radius of schools, a 1.5 miles to high schools, a 1.5 miles to high schools, and 3/4 mile to elementary schools and the like. So we are trying to spread out the burden on the town, because we know that, for instance, in the next couple of years, we will have $3.5 to $4 million paving burdens to also implement.
As you sit here today, can you give us a sense of what impacts the proposed ordinance, if it's passed, will have on the DPW budget.
Okay, so look, I've read this ordinance and I read it with my DPW hat on, and I'm not sure how this gets implemented. The way I've read this is that the town, and I assume that's engineering and DPW, are required to develop an annual complete streets plan and provide capital planning in the annual budget. I don't understand what that means. To require engineering and public works to address this plan in the annual budget, I think it would probably be more appropriate to have it in the capital budget. Maybe that's what that means. I think that would be an important addition. And the other thing is the what piece of this is pretty clear to me on how to address all of the infrastructure in town. This kind of adds the element of how it should get done. I don't know the impact of the program if every street has to be assessed this way, because certain streets, let's call them the low-hanging fruit, would get accelerated and other ones would get put lower into the schedule because more work has to be done there. The only other thing, Mr. Moderator, if I'm speaking too much, just let me know.
No, when you're done, I would appreciate someone else to have a chance. Not you, Representative McCormick's been up for quite a while now, so you're doing fine.
So I forgot my train of thought. The implementation. Yeah, I mean, streets that are ready to go would go. It would juggle the lineup. It would require a lot more of subjectivity rather than the objectivity that we presently engage. And the last thing is this requirement for DPW to go and survey property owners, deal with utility companies. We do that anyway, but in the notion of complete streets, in the notion of adding sidewalks, bike paths, and the like, within our right of way, we're going to encounter the requirement to relocate fire hydrants, relocate utility poles. I think everyone in this room is aware of how agonizing it is to deal with these electric companies lately. And we face that every day. It just brings the program to a grinding halt until those items can be done. And believe me, it's not a simple matter. The last thing is, if you survey people on a road and you want to install a sidewalk, I don't know what we have to do. If 80% of the people on that road want the sidewalk and 20 don't, do we go forward? What I read in this ordinance is that gets subordinated to complete streets. And, you know, whatever is adopted here, I will conform with and I will implement, but I think that's problematic. So that's section G. 3G? Okay. It's 3G, which I think is a little bit cumbersome and problematic for us.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Concerning capital planning, Mr. Hurley, sorry to interrupt your note-taking there. You have this, the capital planning, BOF capital planning meeting the other night, $2.5 million for this in 2025, is that correct?
Bill Hurley, engineering manager. The 2.5 million was our estimate based on the current schedule for fiscal year 24 and projected 25. And it was also based on the roads that we would have had to quote, put in sidewalks or some improvements in 23.
Thank you, sir. Representative Kuhn, did you ever have? Okay, Representative Astorita? Thank you, Bill. Bill Gerber, did you want to respond to the? Sure. Astorita?
Yeah,
You can wait there for a minute.
Okay, I just wanted to respond to a couple of things about the budget. Yes, it's a capital budget. About the meeting with the police and police commission, there was a major change put in based on their feedback, which I mentioned, which was sort of taking the bike ped committee out of this. There was concern that that would create bureaucracy with an additional step. So I just moved that over to the LTA, which is the police commission. And the concern about this being redundant with what the police currently do, I think that's sort of a philosophical difference, because I think what I think we're trying to do here is these are, engineering solutions, which the police are involved in making those decisions, but it's very engineering heavy. So this is really requiring some planning. That's a long-term plan and, a rolling sort of waterfall that allows people to know what's coming up and whether things aren't done, why they're not done in a transparent way. I don't really envision that. This is just my opinion, having a big impact on the police. It may impact the police commission somewhat as they, may be getting the evaluations during budget season of what it is that the town engineer thinks should be done during that year. Regarding corresponding with DPW, I think we're splitting hairs here a little bit, because I have emailed Mr. Marsilio through the moderator several times. Other than Mr. Hurley, some feedback I've gotten early on from Attorney Baldwin recently. I haven't heard back from any of those emails, and I just didn't know. I didn't chase them down, but I really, Mr. Hurley is town engineer, reports to DPW. He's part of DPW, so I don't think that's really the big issue here. I think, I don't think that's the issue here. So, but yeah, that's it. That's it.
Thank you, Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 10. Mr. Marsilio, thank you for those comments. It would have been nice if we had perhaps heard that before tonight, but excuse me, that's where we are. I beg the body's indulgence tonight. Usually when I come up here, I prefer to speak extemporaneously, but I felt that this topic was so important that I wanted to actually write down my remarks to make sure that I said them coherently and covered everything that I wanted to make. So again, I beg your indulgence. I'm extremely disappointed in how the Safe and Livable Streets ordinance has been handled. The ordinance was only provided to the Republican caucus at the end of July, 3 months ago. The first opportunity for this body to ask questions regarding the ordinance was last month. I heard Representative Gerber say that we could have contacted him at any time with questions, and I'm sure that that was true. However, because we did not come to him with questions, it seems the implication is that we have run out of time and as a result have forfeited our ability to ask more questions and raise any issues. I completely reject that notion. I believe our twice monthly meetings are the proper forum where questions should be asked and addressed in a public setting so the residents and taxpayers in Fairfield also have a chance to understand the logic and details behind any ordinance they will be asked to live under and pay for. I'm also extremely disappointed in the process used to draft this ordinance. The ordinance was drafted behind closed doors by one person without the involvement or the input of any of the relevant town bodies. And you're certainly hearing the results of that tonight. Representative Gerber says he relied on other individuals whom he refuses to name based upon their request. If these individuals refuse to be named, then I would suggest they should never have been involved in something so consequential for the town in the first place. Nor was sufficient time allotted for the town attorney to review the ordinance. In fact, Representative Gerber stated that he intentionally chose not to share the ordinance with the town attorney. I'm sorry, folks, this isn't kindergarten. We don't get to cut individuals who have a legitimate role in a process out of that process simply because we don't like them or we have had issues working with them in the past. I would encourage all of you to try that at your places of work and see how far that gets you. Probably fired is what I would guess. I'd like to contrast this process used to prepare this ordinance with the process used on the recently passed noise ordinance. To her credit, Representative Vergara worked with the police and the town attorney and took feedback from these meetings to make the ordinance better. Did it take time? Yes. But was it worth it? I would say yes, since it went from something I initially opposed to an ordinance I supported and was able to vote for. We also have to consider the cost to the taxpayers of Fairfield of implementing complete streets. When asked, Representative Gerber could not provide any estimates of what this would cost the town. I heard a comment along the lines of it's over 20 years, so it may not be a big deal. And that's all well and good. And indeed, it may turn out not to be a big deal. But what are those costs over the next 20 years? I certainly would like to know before obligating the town. If you watched the Board of Finance last week, you would know the town has major capital projects approaching in the next few years, including the renovation of Dwight Elementary School and an overhaul of the school's sewer system. Projects that right now are estimated to cost the town in excess of $150 million. And those figures are only likely to go up. Are we to tell the parents of Dwight that, sorry, we have to delay the renovation of their child's school because of the costs associated with complete streets? Well, can't we just use the exception process that the ordinance provides for when costs are too much? Sure, but I don't think the town wants to get into the habit of denying some neighborhoods complete street funding simply because their neighborhood's projects are too expensive. We like to throw around the word equity these days. So tell me, where's the equity in that? This ordinance is also complex and not quite so simple as it has been made out to be. Again, you're seeing that firsthand here tonight. I do have a better understanding of it today because of last week's discussion, but I'm still not clear on many things. We all received an email this week from a resident who supports the ordinance, who was hit by a car at the intersection of South Pine Creek and Oldfield Road, an intersection with four-way stop signs and crosswalks. Can someone explain to me how passing this ordinance would have prevented that unfortunate accident? I too hear complaints concerning traffic safety, but they generally involve people blowing through stop signs and red lights. Perhaps we try stricter enforcement of the traffic and pedestrian laws before we pass something of this magnitude without fully understanding it. I hope we can all agree we all want safer streets. I want safer streets, but I also want responsible government. The two things are not mutually exclusive. I think passing this ordinance tonight would be irresponsible. I ask my colleagues here tonight to withdraw this ordinance and allow all of us in this body the time necessary to fully digest and understand the implications of what its passage would be. Will it take time? Absolutely. Will it take more time than we'd like? Probably. But I think in the end, we can get to a place where we can all support this. Finally, I just want to wrap up by saying, I think it would be in the best interest of the town if the town did commission a study to determine the feasibility of making the town's streets, complete streets, compliant. And with that, an estimate of the potential costs involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Astorita. Representative Gerber?
I appreciate Representative Astrita's passion. I completely reject some of his comments and as not being realistic. We have a history of passing ordinances in the way that we are going to review this one and hopefully pass it. We have instructions from the Republican caucus over the last year or so to not provide them a draft until it's ready. And so I'm really confused by the accusations that I did this under the cover of darkness. I worked on an ordinance. I put an enormous amount of time in it. I discussed it at a public forum at the library. I put a draft in front of my colleagues 3 months ago. I asked for co-sponsors. I welcomed and asked some specific Republicans if they would also co-sponsor. We had plenty of time to meet and discuss, have genuine conversations, and I was more than willing to bring this back to LNA and take their considerations into account. I think I've taken the comments that I have received, mostly from Attorney Baldwin, into account. But, you know, things have to work on real time. We have people getting hit. We have people dying in our town. And this is important. And, you know, a lot of, you know, you can take a semester of college, 3 months, figure out how to do calculus, figure out how to do many different types of subjects in a 3-month period. This was a lot of time. And like I said, when this was available to people and we asked for feedback, there was silence. And so, you know, I feel very comfortable. And also, I think I ought to note that while there are some people who worked on this that I can't name because of their positions, there are many people who I have named, and they're sitting here tonight. And I could go through them again, but I have gone through them again. Former chairs of the Bike Ped Committee, current member of the Bike Ped Committee, the person who wrote the Complete Streets Policy, another person who wrote the Complete Streets Policy. So it's not like I haven't been open. They're sitting here right now, many of them. But there are some certain people in positions of authority who did not want to be named. And you know, so you can either take this ordinance and look at it on its own merits. You can vote against it if you don't like it, but don't point to something like the cover of darkness, and I personally find that really offensive, so thanks.
Representative Astorita?
You know, Bill, I too appreciate your passion on this, but, you know, let's be honest here. You just made about 10 amendments that probably 3/4 of people in this room couldn't follow. And this is an ordinance that's gonna have a tremendous impact on the town. Does that sound like it's ready for prime time? I don't think so. We've just heard from the Department of DPW. You hadn't consulted with them. You only brought Attorney Baldwin in last week. You know, this should have, the vetting process for this bill should have happened a long time ago, if, as you said, you had begun working on it months ago. What I am simply saying is we are where we are, and from this point forward, we should take the time to vet this bill. I mean, my point is, I want to get to a point where I support this. I want to vote for the Safe and Livable Streets ordinance. It's just not ready yet. We need to take the time to go through it carefully to make sure that we understand what the implications are of what we are voting for. It is that simple. Thank you.
Representative Stilley, did you have a question? Okay. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. I want to thank Representative Astorita. Your passion really put me over the top on a couple of issues here. There's three things that I've heard tonight that are causing me concern. There's three stakeholders in this room that I really think have swayed me tonight that this really isn't ready for prime time. To Attorney Baldwin's, I mean, he basically said it's not ready. And I agree with that. I don't, also too, with Captain Irizarry, his comments concerning, you know, slowing the process down. I agree with that, but I would also like the police department to have some time to look at the amendments because that would impact them. And I'm really surprised that tonight's the first time I'm hearing from the DPW director. I mean, this is his department. And for him not to be consulted in a way that would, you know, give proper input as to cost and everything else. I mean, it shocks me that the DPW director gets up here tonight and says, I'm not sure how this is going to get implemented. That's scary. That means this thing is half baked. So at this process, I agree with Mr. Astorita, though. I really do want to support this. I think we can get this thing to where it needs to be. We just need more time. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this to our next regularly scheduled meeting of November 27th.
You'll need to change that from November 27th since that's the day people are being sworn in. The RTM will have to be sworn in.
Regularly scheduled RTM meeting.
Thank you. Well, you gave a date, so I just wanted to correct you. Second, Representative McCormick. I think we've heard enough comments about it, so I'm going to take that to a vote. All those in, oh, wait, the two people missing, so we'll wait. Anybody have any music? Vote is to postpone. Sorry, just can't do it. I'll leave a vote. There's plenty of time for him to comment after this vote. And we still have public comment to get to. Okay, what's on the table is a vote to postpone, so all those in postpone the ordinance, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Abstentions? Motion fails. I'd like to go to public comment, and then we're going to come back to RTM. So, public, you have 3 minutes tonight. Give your name and address, and whoever wants to go first.
My name is Jeff Randolph, live at 20 Cedar Woods Lane, Fairfield. I'm a lifelong cyclist. I've lived in Fairfield since 1995. I'm a registered architect and I work with traffic engineers, designated traffic engineers, not just civil engineers, but designated traffic engineers multiple times a week. So I've got pretty deep expertise in this area. RTM members, roadway deaths are a significant problem in Fairfield and deserve your immediate attention. While you've served on the RTM, 5 pedestrians have lost their lives in Fairfield's roads. This is tragic, but tonight we're asking you for more than your thoughts and prayers. We're urging you to take action, show leadership, and commit to doing the right thing. I'm asking you to vote for the Safe Streets Ordinance. Certain members of the RTM have allowed partisanship to eclipse leadership, prioritizing party over the safety and well-being of our town's residents. Please demonstrate leadership and put policy over party. 5 families will have empty seats at their Thanksgiving tables due to avoidable road fatalities that have happened on your watch. You have the opportunity to step up and provide solace to the grieving families and address this issue. We implore you to take action with a bipartisan yes vote. Merely hoping for improvement and ignoring this problem will achieve nothing. You are elected to be the voice of your community. Cast a vote for those whose lives have been lost. Tonight, we ask you to not shirk your responsibilities and to exhibit leadership by voting yes in a bipartisan manner. Pedestrian deaths can be prevented through informed roadway and sidewalk design. Not prevention, not enforcement, design. That's what we're asking about tonight is design. Fairfield currently lacks the necessary resources and expertise. It's essential to secure these resources and develop this competence within Fairfield. Vote yes. Some of you in opposition are cyclists. Jeff Steele. We're pedestrians on our roads. Ask yourself if our roads are genuinely safe as you ride your bike or walk your dog. The answer is unequivocally no. Before casting your vote tonight, reflect on whether you've done your part to enhance Fairfield's safety and well-being. Many are concerned about the cost and view roadway fatalities as a normal occurrence. This reasoning is reminiscent of the skepticism surrounding seatbelt mandates, secondhand smoke regulations, and blood alcohol drunk driving limits. All these safety measures are now universally accepted, but were initially dismissed by people like those who will vote against this ordinance tonight. The US DOT has committed $5 billion to plan, hire, staff, and implement these improvements. Fairfield will only receive its fair share after you vote yes. Repeating the same actions and expecting different results is counterproductive. Implementing these changes will take time, and we must begin today. Republican RTM members, you have an opportunity to exhibit true leadership and forward-thinking vision to make Fairfield a safer and better community. Vote yes tonight for the Safe Streets Ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. Next.
Good evening. My name is Bill Pollack, 74 Woodside Circle, the Stratfield section. I'm a licensed landscape architect. I helped author the Complete Streets policy in 2018. I was the chair of the Complete Streets Committee and a member of the Bike Ped Committee at that time. When we developed that policy, we had significant input from numerous town bodies and departments, and virtually had unanimous support, planning and zoning, public works, engineering, the Fairfield Police Department, the Traffic Safety Unit, Police Commission. I have a stack of letters, which I won't read, of endorsement, Police Chief Liddy, Police Chief McNamara, economic development, I can go on and on. So the policy was developed with a lot of input from so many stakeholders at that time. And when this ordinance came about and essentially was the next step in implementing this policy, I know the engineering department works very hard. I know Bill Hurley very well and his staff. I view this ordinance as supporting them, supporting their efforts, helping them to implement the policy. It's just not been happening as well as it could be. And again, it's not their fault, it's nobody's fault. An ordinance, frankly, gives the policy some more backbone and some more teeth. I've seen this done, as I said, I'm a licensed landscape architect. I've done a lot of traffic projects over my career. Towns and municipalities that embrace this and have ordinances, basically codes and laws to enact complete streets improvements, they really get things done. There's several examples in Connecticut. There's hundreds and hundreds of examples nationwide. We're not the first municipality to try to come up with this. We're not the first planning department or engineering department or zoning department or RTM to have considered this. So it does work. It works in other municipalities. Fairfield, part of the reason we developed the policy when we did was it helps us to get funding, just having the policy has helped us to get funding over the years. Strengthening it with an ordinance will take it to the next level. And we've been seeing that recently, that the state, the DOT, has been embracing complete streets and strengthening their own policy and supporting funding for these improvements as a result. So we're looking forward to Fairfield getting to that next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Roy. I live at 3 Buena Vista Road. I've been working on safe streets for Fairfield in one capacity or another for about 7 years, pretty much since we moved here. And I'm here to say that this is our opportunity to meet the moment. As Bill just mentioned, the State Department of Transportation has increased they've put teeth into their complete streets policy. They're now requiring procedures and policies very similar to what's being proposed here tonight be used in consideration whenever there's a certain level of reconstruction or work being done on state-controlled roads. I just went to a workshop last week. Folks from the DOT were talking about their controlling design criteria. It's a very similar system to what we're proposing here. And I didn't bring this up because over the course of my advocacy work in the past 7 years, I've often heard, not often, but sometimes heard resistance to certain safety proposals, and the excuse being, well, we have to follow the rules of the DOT. The DOT's rules are changing, the precedents are changing, and if it's true that we must follow their lead, the time is now to do that. Because they are paving the way with complete streets. And so that's no longer a viable excuse not to take action. If we don't take action now, we're going to be falling behind. I think you don't need to look any further than the city of Norwalk. They're going through their own process of a complete streets ordinance, complete streets plan, and design guidelines. And I'm really disappointed to hear reservations from some of our town staff and decision makers, because I look to places like the city of Norwalk where this is embraced by the whole city. And I've talked to folks in their traffic, parking, and enforcement department who say, we want clarity and transparency behind our processes. We have a complete streets checklist in that wonderful policy Bill put together in 2018. As of winter 2022, there was no record of it ever being used. When we're making these decisions, we need a paper trail documenting how these decisions were made and why they were made, so anyone at any point can go back, and if they have a question, they can understand what the process was. We lack that process now. So I encourage you to vote for this so that we can have transparency in our design process and we can improve the quality of life for everybody. Just Google complete street statistics and you'll see that there's no losing behind this. It improves public health, the economy, and I'll just say you can look to places like the city of New Britain. Over their 10-year complete streets plan, they leveraged $8 million of city funding into over 32,000 in state and federal grants. So they spent about $800,000 over a year for 10 years, and were able to, practically quadruple that. You can look it up. It's in there. It's on their website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Corsillo. I live at 839 Churchill Road. I'm here again to urge you in the strongest possible terms to vote yes on the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance. I know the majority of this body supports this ordinance, and I'm hopeful that when it comes to a vote, it will pass with bipartisan support. But I want to speak to those of you who are leaning toward voting no or who are on the fence. I've heard more than one of you in this room say, well, we all support safe streets. And I hope that's true. I want to believe that's true, but actions speak louder than words. And tonight, or whenever this comes to a vote, you have the opportunity to demonstrate that you support safe streets. I think, there have been concerns raised by some who have spoken tonight about the process that got us to the point where we are tonight. And I'm not here to tell you that you're right or that you're wrong. You're certainly entitled to your opinion. But what I will say is that at the end of the day, it's not the process that people remember. It's going to be the result that people remember. If you watch baseball, you'll see sometimes a hitter will get on base with a bloop single. And sometimes that bloop single will drive in the winning run. And when that fades from memory, what still remains at the end down the road is the box score. And the box score, it doesn't distinguish between a bloop single and a hard line drive. I mean, the result is what people remember. And so when people look back in Fairfield, what they're going to remember, what will stand is the record of how you voted tonight. And what they'll remember is the result. And so I'm asking for you all to make sure that your actions match your words. And if that means that you have to vote under protest of the process, that you had a problem with, that's fine. I understand that. But make sure that the result that people are going to remember reflects what you've all said about how much you support safe streets. So the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance is a result. I think it's a result that we can and should all be proud of. And so tonight, again, I urge you to say yes to this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Priscilla.
Hi there, Katie Flynn, 204 Grandview Road. A decade ago, this week actually, my husband and I purchased our home in the North Stratfield neighborhood, specifically in walking distance of our local elementary school. 2 years and twin boys later, when my oldest started kindergarten, walking, which should have been a joyful part of our day in the mornings and afternoons, became stressful and concerning. No sidewalks, no clear path. I was really perplexed as a parent what to do. As my boys have grown, these concerns have only ballooned. As COVID migration and construction exploded in the NSS neighborhood, specifically surrounding the streets of NSS, this has only been a growing concern for myself and my neighbors. Luckily for myself, that first meeting of the NSS PTA was to discuss a stop sign and additional safety features with our Fairfield PD in attendance. Perfect. Actionable steps. You show up and change will come. What seemed like endless surveys and meetings later, we were told no stop sign was possible in the location that would really have been the only to make a difference. Not the end of any Aaron Sorkin movie I had ever seen. This ordinance would have prevented that frustration and sadly what resulted next. No change, no increase to the walkability of our wonderful neighborhood school, and continued anxiety about all of our community's worst fears, the what ifs of our children's unsafe path to school. Government is here to be an assistance to the community, to help make life safer, easier, and more transparent when it can. I came here in person to support this ordinance because I believe it's important to acknowledge when government can help our community. As a parent who has spent the last year deeply entrenched in the work of redistricting, one topic has been crystal clear in Fairfield. This community loves its neighborhood schools and wants the safest paths to walk to their hubs of their community. Building our infrastructure in a mindful way of innovation and safety should be of the utmost priority to this body. Please support this ordinance. Fairfield will be better and safer because of it. Thank you all for your time and work. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn.
Hi, Amy Barrett. I live at 306 Villa Avenue. And I'm here tonight to ask that the RTM approve the Safe and Livable Streets ordinance that is before them tonight. My neighbor's partner and I have been advocating for safer streets and sidewalks for over 2 years, ever since a car crashed into my and several other neighbors' yards at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning. The police report states that the driver was doing in excess of 80 miles an hour on Villa Avenue. This was not the first accident caused by speed and reckless driving on my road, and in my 25 years living on Villa Avenue, and it certainly has not and will not be the last. In light of recent pedestrian deaths and accidents involving motorized scooters, the first selectwoman sent an email to residents with tips on pedestrian safety. All of these tips put the burden on the pedestrian to stay safe. And I ask you, why is that? Why is it the responsibility of the pedestrian to be safe? Many of these pedestrians are our youngest community members, children walking to school, biking, residents out walking their dog. The burden should not be on them to take all of the measures to be safe while they're out enjoying our wonderful town. You know, our town needs this ordinance. At the last RTM one member stated that Fairfield is unique and we shouldn't really be considering this. And another stated that we already have too many crosswalks and that it inconvenienced them while they were driving down the post road through town center. I would argue that we are only unique. Yes, actually, it was you, Mr. Bateson, Representative Bateson, that said we had too many crosswalks. Yeah, you did. So I would argue that we are only unique in that we have had more deaths than similar surrounding towns, such as Westport, in the same time period. And all those pesky crosswalks in town center, those crosswalks protect the children and adults that are supporting our local economy and small businesses. In July of 2023, Westport formed a traffic safety task force with a budget of over $550,000 to study, recommend, and implement traffic calming measures. $450,000 of that was funded by grants, and that's something some of the other members of the public have spoke about. An ordinance gives the town the ability to get significant amounts of grant funding to pay for many of these projects that are sorely needed. Having an employee dedicated to implementing this ordinance would also help, I just said that. They would coordinate with utility companies, which is something that currently, based on my experience in this process, and I was told by the engineering department, that they do not do. They do not coordinate with the utility departments when creating their project planning. So they might do a study, might recommend a solution, and then they really have no idea. They cannot give you a time frame for implementation, DPW resources aside. They're at the mercy of the utility companies. This ordinance would also bring our methods to study traffic and the resulting metrics up to date with other towns who take safe and livable streets seriously. And I see that I'm out of time. I didn't think I was going to take this much time. This guy was given to me by the town during a walkthrough with the first selectwoman and the police commission. And while it's cute and it's somewhat humorous, I think it really exemplifies the attitude that the town has towards safe streets. This little guy has been sitting in front of my house, and I can tell you it's done nothing to slow the traffic down. As a career compliance officer, the only thing that you can do to change people's behavior is 100% compliance or 100% enforcement 100% of the time. We do not have the resources for that. We need to change the environment in which people are living in order to change behavior. So I hope you vote yes for this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Sarah Mason, 15 Fife Road. I already submitted written comments and I hope you read them. I'm not gonna read them. I just wanted to say tonight that Fairfield needs this ordinance. Safe streets is a nonpartisan issue. We need safe streets tonight, not days, weeks, months, or years from now. The current process is woefully inadequate. It lacks common sense. It lacks accountability. There are countless examples that speak to this. Anyone who says otherwise is frankly part of the problem. People are dying and getting injured on our streets. There aren't many issues you will find agreement on, but needing safer streets in Fairfield is one of them. Any change is good change. Please be part of that change and please vote yes. Representative Astorita asked about how this ordinance would prevent someone from getting injured in a crosswalk. Just a couple weeks ago, my daughter was swimming at the Y. I walked across Oldfield to the library with my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old. I was walking back. I was going across Oldfield. I turned left and the car was stopped at the crosswalk. I started to walk. My 5-year-old was a couple steps in front of me and somebody decided to gun it through the crosswalk. Could have hit me and my kids. And I bring this up because a raised crosswalk at that intersection in town where people are walking to and from the Y, where we're encouraged to do our programming, would prevent that. It would not allow somebody to get to a speed that quickly that could injure me, my 5-year-old, or my 2-year-old, or even my 7-year-old who's at the Y. I think Representative Gale spoke about prioritization. Currently, there is none. There's nobody looking at this stuff across the town. It's on the neighbors to bring it to your attention. It's on us to give you the solution. It makes no sense. Norwalk, which Sarah Roy spoke about, has a robust system. It's publicly available. There's checklists. It tells you what type of road you live on, what kind of streets, if it's business, if it's residential, and it tells you right there in real time if you are eligible for your safe streets. I really would encourage you, process is important, yes, but the product is more important and we need this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mason.
My name is Todd Sample. I live at 275 Euclid Avenue. So I'm a bit of an outsider. I moved here from Brooklyn. I lived there for 20 years. I know there's an influx for a lot of people like me moving here from the city. I'm part of this group. These are my neighbors. I've been appalled by the driving in this town. Everybody's on my butt. I'm going 5 over. Everybody's distracted, you know. We're not keeping up with the technology, you know. Like this guy's on his phone right here, you know. It's like people are on their phones all the time. You're seeing it, you know. You look in the rearview mirror, you got this trick, you know. They're like concentrating on the phone more than the car. I'm scared to ride my bike around here. I rode my bike for 20 years in Brooklyn. I don't know how many times you guys have been riding your bikes in Brooklyn and Manhattan, but it's not easy, but it's at least like predictable. And it's a lot harder around here. So I think this ordinance, I was able to review it. I thought it was pretty readable. I thought Bill's amendments were pretty easy to follow, actually, and I don't have a printout. I noted that 2 people that spoke that they weren't able to follow, they didn't actually have a copy, so maybe that would help them follow along to the amendments that he went over line by line. So yeah, I just think you should pass it. It's a really good way to try to get a handle on things that are just moving really, really fast on us. This is my counter, right? There's a lot of studies that show that not only is there a lot of changes that are happening in our world, it's the rate that those changes are occurring. It's so hard for us to keep up with things that are changing. And I think that this ordinance, if you look through it, is a really good way to kind of get ahead, like Sarah said, get ahead of things and just get a little bit of control over it so we can, keep people from dying and getting hurt. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sample. Any other public comment?
Okay. My name is Jackson Shostak, 138 Figler Avenue. I grew up playing in the street, throwing a football with my dad, walking my dogs, riding bikes and scooters in and around my neighborhood, and even to the beach from the Holland Hill area. And now I'm an avid runner. I encourage all members of the RTM to vote against this ordinance or to postpone the vote until all the necessary collaboration and amendments have been added to this ordinance. I respect Bill Gerber's time in authoring this legislation. However, this policy was rushed and with no input from community stakeholders, especially from our police department and Department of Public Works, who both oversee our roads and public safety initiatives. It was written without the town's professional input and many of the leaders that know our infrastructure and planning the best. You learn in a high school government and civics class that legislation requires collaboration. Legislative committees take input from all stakeholders, including executive department heads. It was not drafted in this sense. Mr. Gerber always speaks on accountability, transparency, and collaboration, yet here we are, town departments and a whole caucus left in the dark. I encourage our town legislators to legislate. Take time in making the right decisions, not rushed ones. What's popular isn't always right, and what's right isn't always popular. As a resident who loves his runs, bike rides, dog walking, etc., we need safe streets. We all want to provide a safe town for all residents. However, this isn't the right piece of legislation to get there. I believe that working together across party lines with input from town leaders can deliver us even safer streets. Be transparent, be accountable, and be collaborative. Thank you for your time, and please vote against this rushed piece of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Shostak. Any other public comment? Anybody on WebEx?
Yes.
You're not public. We're not back there yet. Any public comments from anybody on WebEx?
Yeah, there's one, if that's okay. Tim Goff here, 212 Broadbent Road in Fairfield. Similar to one of the other members, I already
Sorry, what's your name?
Tim Goff, 212 Broadbent Road, Fairfield. I submitted all my comments already, so hopefully you got a chance to read through those. But I'm going to echo a lot of the other people who spoke in that since moving here from the city, I've just been really, really shocked at the inadequacy of the streets and also just the really kind of shocking behavior of drivers, which is all of us in the way that we drive around this town. My worry is that we are way, way, way behind where we need to be, way behind on road design, on enforcement, and really just kind of getting the public message that speed kills. It literally does. And it is ruining people's lives here on a daily basis. And we don't seem to want to take and acknowledge that. So yes, I agree with some of the comments that like, you know what, some of it's about enforcement. But at the same time, unless we have an ordinance and something to ground us and drive some change, we are going to fall further and further behind. I appreciate that there's a lot of partisan conversation points here, but the truth is we're going to just move ourselves further and further back from driving any sort of change here. I don't think any single document is going to be perfect to everyone. As I see it, this just provides a framework that we can operate around. And in that context, knowing that you can't put a fixed price on what it's going to cost here, but we're going to have to make some big decisions and invest in this, it just feels like it would be really, really backwards of everyone to not want to move us forward in that respect. So hopefully we can all agree that this is the right way forward for the town and vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Any other public comments from WebEx? Nobody else. Everybody else here is done? Yep. Okay. We'll bring it back to the body. Representative Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Steele, District 2. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm on a business trip in Cleveland, so I wish I could be there in person. Always harder on WebEx. I really appreciate hearing everyone in the public speak tonight. It's really good to hear this full account. I think it's important we hear it, and I think we all empathize with everything you're saying. We really do. What I want to say is a couple of things. One is I've been a member for 14 years, as I've mentioned in the past. I basically ordinances, the way they've traditionally been done is representatives of each caucus come up with a very productive type of ordinance that can be beneficial to the town, something that's probably going to be supported by both sides, something that is again progressive and beneficial to the town. That's the way we've always done it. I've never seen an ordinance other than the noise ordinance which has created such divisiveness. But I want to talk about what this divisiveness is about. It is not about the intent and the vision of this ordinance. I think everybody on the RTM completely empathizes and understands what the members of the public just displayed to us. I think we understand that we want safe streets. That is not contested. That's not being contested. We don't disagree with that. We want safe streets. We are not against safe streets. Okay, I want to make that very clear. Yes, someone mentioned I bike on Reading Road and throughout town. Yeah, Reading Road, I'm terrified. I don't like going down it. It is scary. Every time I go on it, I'm scared. So I understand. I get it. I totally understand the content and the intent of what we're trying to do here. I really do. But someone here talked about process and how process is not important, that it's about the results. Well, I disagree vehemently on that. We all run to be RTM members and to be members, elected members of our town, to look at issues, to analyze issues, to debate issues, to think about issues. It is most certainly about the process. We have to think through this very carefully, and that entails everything we've gone through so far, the debate and the analysis of the issues. That's how we get to that great end result, that vote. And usually, as I said, almost every time we've proposed an ordinance, it has been almost unanimous, if not a strong majority. So the disagreement here is about the process. And so when I talk about process again, we've had three bodies or three departments come up here tonight, just tonight alone, the night we're to approve it. We had DPW come up and they said, I'm not sure how it gets implemented. This really brings programs to a grinding halt. This is not a simple matter. Police department says this creates more delays. Also DPW, more delays with paving. The police department says traffic and safety. We don't understand how this will be implemented. And then we have the town attorney who says there are still many questions on how we implement this and the process and reporting. So right here, the night we're supposed to approve it, let alone we don't know costs. We don't know expenses. We don't know what this is going to entail. So again, I really want to emphasize that we're not against the intent. It's having this be thoroughly vetted by all the right departments. And these departments I just mentioned, they are key stakeholders. Our town attorney was purposefully avoided in reviewing this. Or it was avoided, they avoided giving to him to review early enough, 2 weeks earlier. That's all. And so, excuse me, and I just, it's not just about the members here, the RTM members. Yes, we were given 3 months. This was given to us in July. For LNA, we're given it a month earlier. But we weren't at the beginning, the gestation of this ordinance, which usually, again, happens in a bipartisan way. That's the beauty of the RTM. That's the beauty of how we've done this in the past. Let's do this together in a way that supports and promotes the town. So there's that. And then I just end by saying, there's also some amendments that came up tonight. These are fairly substantive amendments, and there were many of them. We went over it about 15, 20 minutes. That normally would would call for a delay for another month so we can review the amendments. I mean, I was given the amendments, we all were recently, but it takes a little more time to digest even those amendments. So that argument alone should call for pushing this back and postponing it. But in the end, I don't really see the reason why this has to happen tonight. Yes, it should happen soon, or we should consider it and talk about it and debate it. Absolutely. And we can do this together. But let's make this the best it can be. Let's make it the best ordinance can be. Let's cross every, dot every I, cross every T. Let's make sure it is complete. And it is not complete. And that's the issue. It's just not complete yet. And I think we'd be doing our town a disservice to put something through that's just not done yet. We have questions. We don't know costs. We don't know a lot of things still, but we can do this and we can do this all together and this can get done. So again, I want to be clear to everyone in the public. We are not against safe streets. We want safe streets, but let's do this together and let's do it in a way that we fill every gap and we make sure everything is answered. I hear the town attorney say it's just not ready. Shouldn't we listen to that? So I'll stop there. Like I said, I personally not necessarily against content of this, but it needs to be further assessed. And therefore, I don't think it should be done tonight. Why can't we push it back a couple of meetings? Yes, we have a new session coming up. Most of us will be there, maybe not all of us, but most of us, and the torch can be carried forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lambert.
Tom Lambert, District 3. I'm proud to rise, or in this case, sit in support of this ordinance. I haven't spoken much in front of this body. I'm a new member who's not going to be running for re-election again. But I did have a few thoughts that, like Representative Astorita, I want to write down to make sure that I encapsulated everything that I want to say, so if you would bear with me. When I decided to run for RTM a couple of years ago, I have to admit that my focus was pretty myopic. I really only thought exclusively at the time of why I would want to run and answering that question as to why I would want to run. Because I wanted to make sure that our school budgets were fully funded. I wanted to make sure that Fairfield was a more affordable place to live. And I'm proud that I got to co-sponsor the Fair Rent Commission that we were able to help pass. But since joining the RTM, I've learned that this job is so much more than just a few select issues. Sometimes it's voting on sewer infrastructure, sometimes it's pickleball courts, sometimes it's passing, or at least trying to pass, a sense of the body resolution to call racism a public health crisis. And sometimes, like this time, it's like passing an ordinance. I admit that before I ran, I didn't think much about noise or safe streets. But my eyes have been open since being on this body. I've been blown away by the doers and the movers and the shakers in this body who try to improve our town in meaningful ways. Jill Vergara and Bill Gerber come to mind for all the hard work that they've done, how they've immersed themselves in the details, and how they've given us fantastic ordinances as a result. Ordinances that will make Fairfield a better place to live. It's easy to find my way to yes on these votes because the work that they've done has been so thorough, so transparent and authoritative, and that they had the input of countless other stakeholders that can see why this is the best ordinance that it can be. If there's a question as to how an ordinance would be implemented, our sponsors have included plenty of reference material as to how to do so. Because sponsors like Bill have done the hard work, I am proud that in this, my last meeting in front of this body, that I have a chance to support an ordinance that will quite literally save lives. Though voices from certain of my colleagues called to delay, an unfortunate political refrain that I've heard quite a bit in my 2 years on this body, I'm heartened by the fact that I have a majority that's working with me and with Bill that understands the urgency of the moment. A majority that's taken action to respond to overwhelming call that we hear from the public repeatedly to make Fairfield a better place to live. When you hear opposition to an ordinance like this, you'll hear oftentimes, again, that we should delay. But listen to what they tell you when they say that they're going to support a cause right before they vote to kill it, all in the name of process. I want to thank you, Bill, and everyone else who contributed. I want to thank the public for speaking up and showing their passion today and at numerous other meetings. And to the members of this body for supporting this tremendously impactful ordinance. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to miss getting the opportunity to watch and contribute to and vote on the issues that make this town a better place, a safer place for my wife and my children. But I know that though I won't be on this body myself to continue the hard work of the legislating in the next term, the leaders on this body like Bill Gerber will carry that torch for the rest of Fairfield families like my own. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lambert. Mr. Baldwin?
Thank you. I get the distinct impression that a vote's about to happen, but through you to Mr. Gerber, I would ask the question of whether the Board of Finance should be added to the appendix as one of the relevant town bodies. And just also note for the record that I believe that the Bike and Ped Committee was added to that list in your latest iteration. So that's just a part of my review from today.
Representative Gerber?
Attorney Baldwin, thank you for that comment. That does make sense to me. That would require another amendment.
Yes.
So move to add,
I think she's getting ready to second.
move to add the Board of Finance to the list, Appendix A, to the bodies that are part of what is considered the relevant town bodies for complete streets.
Seconded by Representative Stilley. Any questions, concerns from anybody in the body? All right, seeing none, we'll take that to a vote to amend the amended resolution to include the Board of Finance in Appendix A. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Gale and Astorita. Passes 3602. Thank you. Representative Gale.
Representative Gale, District 6. One of the members of the public referenced Norwalk's approach to complete streets as being very comprehensive and as a model. And so I looked it up on my phone, what's going on in Norwalk. And well, they don't have an ordinance at this point because they are taking quite a long time to engage the public. They had a complete streets workshop on 9/28 where there was a presentation to the public, which was available for everyone to look at. They're currently engaged in surveying the public by November 1st. And then after that, they still have more plans for an additional public workshop to discuss this policy. So that is the kind of timetable they're working at, which makes sense to me because it gives an opportunity for this kind of prioritization that we've been discussing to really be vetted. So, you know, if that's our model, then there's no way that we should be voting this as an ordinance tonight. This is just rushed and it's not appropriate. Thank you very much.
Representative Gale, are they working on an ordinance or a policy?
I believe they're working under a policy right now. And they're working towards a vision of what their complete streets are going to be.
Who brought that up? Ms. Roy, do they have a policy currently in Norwalk? A complete streets policy? Well, this whole place is mic'd, but come on up. So all your side conversations, everybody can hear it. Maybe they're not on tonight, but.
Hi, Sarah Roy, 3 Buena Vista Road. I'll be honest, I don't know all the ins and outs of Norwalk's procedures. I do know that they are going through a process. It's my understanding to create an ordinance, design guidelines, and a policy, but I could be wrong, but I want to make it known that they already, without these things, have a very different way of responding. As my friend Sarah Mason mentioned, if you take a look at their website, they are, without these tools, they have a different culture and procedure. I've attended many of their bike walk commission meetings. Their engineers talk about how when they're going to, similar to what we're trying to achieve here with the ordinance, when they're going to mill and pave a road, they're looking for opportunities to put in buffered bike lanes, raised crosswalks, additional sidewalks, connecting sidewalks where there's sidewalk connectivity missing. They're doing that already, and they're looking to strengthen that, particularly around new development. Is their intention of making sure that there are no loopholes for developers or the city to get away with not doing those things.
Thank you. Representative Gerber.
Not that this is Bill Gerber, District 2. Not that this is going to change anyone's mind, but I just want to remind people, I think we have talked about this, that if you've read the Plan of Conservation and Development, the first thing in that for streets is to develop a complete streets ordinance. That was the result of multiple meetings, town hall meetings that took place with zoning, engineering, and bike ped and all those. So this we have had, actually, this has been a component of the plan that is being put forth by the town as being an important part of the plan for the town.
Thank you. Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara for District 7. I just wanted to reiterate what someone from the public had mentioned. Mr. Pollock, who was a chair of the Bike and Ped Committee and had developed the policy. This took that committee and a bunch of devoted volunteers who spent a lot of time, hard work for 3 years, I believe, putting together a fantastic policy that this is really just meant to codify. It is a policy that was endorsed in 2018 by all of the stakeholders we're really concerned about tonight. It involved DPW, it involved the police, it involved a lot of the different departments, and I believe they also engaged the public. This is a policy that was endorsed in 2018 and it got national acclaim. It put us on the map for a town that really believed in safety and that we were going to develop our town in a modern way that could address the way that we live today and live healthfully and safely. It's regrettable that all of that work was basically dumped down the toilet by having it languish on a shelf It just wasn't being implemented. And unfortunately, we have to take this step tonight to put teeth in it because it wasn't being implemented. It's a great policy, and the reason why it's imperative to do it tonight is because it's been 5 years since it was passed. We did all of that work. We don't have to revisit all of that. This is really, it's not rocket science. A lot of other towns have passed this. We have looked at all of these issues really deeply. It took 3 years to do this. It would be throwing away their work to kind of reduplicate all of that over and over again. So I just think that we have to act tonight because we're dealing with life or death. This is one of the most essential functions of government, is to protect life and safety. And this policy will help us do that. So I really hope we can stand up and support this ordinance.
Thank you. Any other comments? Representative Marable?
Yes, Nick Marable, District 8. In reference to, a member of the body had mentioned that if I had a copy of the amendments, I may have been able to follow along a little closer. I think it was misunderstood what my question was. I wasn't asking Bill to repeat all the changes and amendments that he had made to the ordinance. I had those. What I specifically asked him was, in his own words, which of all those changes do you consider most important? And how did that improve this ordinance? A lot of it was wordsmithing, and I wanted to hear from him what the major change was so that we could have an intelligent conversation before we voted on the amendments. And that was not answered. And that kind of brings me to this, basically in general, where we stand with this. Of course, I'm for safer streets, and nobody in their right mind here is going to say they're not. My family and I, too, walk our dog within the neighborhoods of Fairfield. I used to rollerblade, my kids still do. We use the scooters in town, we use our bikes, we have motorcycles. We're always on these streets in one way or another, and safer streets would be, awesome. The issue that I have with this ordinance is what we've discussed, is that's not fully vetted and we don't have a budget. I've seen this body too many times drag out votes on very minor issues and for some reason make quick decisions on major ones. I think because it's easier to vote on the major ones. It's also easier to discuss the basic ones. So the basic ones get more attention and more talking, and we have to change that. And this one hits two major issues that I have with what's going on and what I hear from our citizens, which is taxes continually go up, up, up. Money seems to be no object, and there's no transparency. And this is a major ordinance that we have no budget on, and there's been no discussion about the cost. And from a transparency standpoint, I believe it's been very weak because as we discussed, there's a lot of town bodies that were not included and would still like to discuss this ordinance, which is why we proposed to bring a vote at a later date. I think it's irresponsible to vote on this today, and if we are going to vote on it today, it's going to get a no from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be clear, Representative Gerber reached out to all the stakeholders in town. Whether they answered or not was up to them. Any other comments? Representative Longo.
Thank you. Melissa Longo, District 1. A couple of things. I think we are all kind of shocked to hear that Representative Gerber reached out to certain people because this was never brought to our attention until now. And I also want to say that, as taxpayers in this town, it is up to us to actually fully vet this process. And it's also, in my opinion, for the people that have been injured or lost their lives, or people who have lost loved ones, anyone who's had a traffic accident. We owe it to those people, to those families to do the right thing here. We owe those people a process in which this should be carried out. I think it's important to make sure that the right safety measures are implemented. We can't do that right now. It doesn't seem that difficult to me for anyone to sit here and say, I want more information based upon what we're hearing, because the amendments that Mr. Gerber made in the 5 minutes he was sitting here was just typo errors. I really didn't hear a clear, concise, explanation of what he's actually amending. He did not really answer Representative Mirable's question. And I think it just went on from there. So a lot of this to me just sounds like word salad, frankly, and it needs to be looked at more closely. And it's too much for us to look at. We got an amendment at 6 o'clock tonight. Our meeting started at 8. I don't think that 2 hours is enough time to actually look this over, make a decision. This is a big deal. It's a very big deal for our residents. It's a very big deal for our taxpayers, and to have nothing here for us to go on other than Representative Gerber's word saying that he reached out to certain bodies and they didn't, or stakeholders, excuse me, saying that they didn't respond is frankly not enough. That should have been brought to our attention immediately. All of this should have, but it wasn't. And I can't change that. But what we can do is talk about it and make this better. What is this going to cost annually? What roadblocks are we going to face going forward? How can we make every concern for our citizens, how do we address that? That's important. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, going back to Norwalk, looking at their timeline, it has a project timeline on their website, and it's saying that the analysis was completed, the policy development is current, walkability workshop was completed, public workshop took place on September 28th, demonstration project is not going to take place until the spring of next year, and the design manual development is not going to hit Norwalk until winter 2023 or the spring of 2024. Granted, Norwalk is they're a city, we are a town, and they are taking the necessary steps to make this happen. And I, again, think that it's worth it for us to take, if we're going to model what we're doing around how they have conducted their investigation of this, then I think we should do that as well. I think we owe it to everyone in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the body? Mr. Walden? You're not the body, but.
Sorry to do this again, but through you, Mr. Moderator, to Representative Gerber, I have a burning question in terms of how the two sections that I'm about to address sync up with one another for legislative history purposes, so that when this policy has to be implemented, what should happen. And I'm referring specifically to the section 3F. All new private development projects which propose improvements along, adjacent to, or within the right-of-way, private projects shall comply with the right-of-way manual and complete streets policy. Approval of any other necessary permits is contingent upon meeting the requirements of the right-of-way manual and complete streets policy. Private projects shall be reviewed by the LTA for consistency with the right-of-way manual and complete streets policy as part of any existing approval process. So then the exceptions in section 4 says that in such a case, a petition documenting the reason for an exception shall be made by the town. and submitted through the Complete Streets Coordinator. That seems to me to leave a hole, meaning that in an application that's going before the TPZ for an improvement, which is going to be adjacent to a town street and right away, that developer does not have the opportunity to seek an exception with the submission of the application to the TPZ and ultimately the LTA? Or do they have to submit, are they mandated to submit a plan which must comply, as it suggests, with the manual and thereafter seek an exception? But then again, who's seeking the exception? It says that it must be done by the town. So I'd like your clarification on that for my edification, because I'm the one who's going to have to be advising these boards and commissions.
They would have to go through the town to file for an exception with the police commission. I'm not really sure where the issue is with that.
Just to be clear on the record, any submission must, it says it must comply, shall comply with the right-of-way manual. It's mandatory. And the exceptions only come later in the process, as I understand it, or is that not your intention? In other words, is it possible for a developer of a commercial building who wants to expand the parking lot and have a new entrance, egress, or what have you, can they submit a request for an exception to the policy?
I mean, that would be my intention, or I think that's logical, that they would be able to ask for an exception through the town that would be submitted to the police commission.
Okay, that's the clarification I need. I don't think that's what the language says expressly, but if that's the legislative intent, then we'll run with it.
Yeah, I think they should have the same rights as, as the town.
Representative Bateson.
Bateson, District 1, that exchange that just happened is exactly why this needs more time. If we had had a public forum with members or their attorneys, they could have had the opportunity to ask that question 6 months prior to it being adopted. But no, here we are tonight adopting it. And quite frankly, that sounded like a major issue to me. I ain't no lawyer, but that sounded pretty important.
Any other comments? Anybody on WebEx? Representative Gale?
Representative Gale, District 6. I'm afraid that Mr. Hurley has left because I actually wanted to ask a question through the moderator to him, but instead I'm just going to bring back up things that he said at the committee meeting to remind the body, because there's been, quite a lot of statements that there was zero adherence to this complete streets policy, that it sat on the shelf, that nothing happened. What I heard at the committee meeting was that every single one of the bike paths that was recommended by the committee was implemented except for the one that was in Greenfield Hill. And that an enormous amount of, that all of the, the ideas for, the ADA compliance and crosswalks and different complete streets, tools to improve safety, that they've been being implemented. So I really think it's unfair, and there's really it's really highly critical of the engineering and the DPW for no reason when they have done their best. I believe Mr. Hurley said that, he didn't use one form that was in the policy, but instead he used a different form that essentially did the same thing because there was really a redundancy. So, I'd just like to remind the body that we all heard last week what a wonderful job our town has actually done implementing this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no further comments, I'd like to take this to a vote. All those in favor, we're going to do a roll call vote. Betsy, please.
Ed Bateson. Melissa Longo. Amy Ruggiero. Bill Gerber. Karen McCormick. Cindy Perham. Jeff Steele.
No.
Alex Durrell.
Abstain.
Jeff Galdenzi. Tom Lambert. Sharon Pastilli. Laura Carson. Michelle McCabe. Marcy Spallier. Liz Zezima. Jennifer Barahona. Josh Garskoff. Joe Siebert. Jay Wolk. Steve Bennett. Hannah Gale. Andy Graceffa. Lisa Havey.
Yes.
John Kuhn. Mark McDermott. Jill Vergara. Karen Wackerman.
Yes.
Hank Ferentz. Jim Myers. Nick Mobley. Christine Brown. Drew Georgiadis. Margaret Horton.
Yes.
Kelly Cinto. Ken Estorita. Peter Britton. Brooks Baracino. Story Tolman.
No.
Twenty-four in favor, 10 opposed, 4 abstentions.
Motion passes 24-10. 4 abstentions. Thank you all. Okay. Item number 10, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be acted upon under the rules of represented town meeting. Anybody have anything? I'd just personally like to say a few things before we break off tonight for our last meeting of this session. First of all, I'd like to thank Betsy Brown for all her help. Left-hand person for the last 2 years. I appreciate it. I'd like to thank Deputy Minority Leader Steele and Minority Leader Bateson for all their help and support over the last 2 years, and the rest of the Republican caucus, as well as the Majority Leader Perham and Majority Leader Liz Zezima and the rest of the caucus. And I want to thank all of you for your service over the last 2 years, or some of us many more years than that. I would like to recognize a few people that won't be running. Good luck to those of you who are running again for the RTM or any other body in town here. It's a great thing to be of service to your town and to people, I think. So we'll start with the Republican side. We'll start with Marty Fleury online. Thank you. Cameron Chiniski, who I don't believe is here tonight. Jim Myers, thank you. Amy Ruggiero, thank you. And probably the longest serving that's not coming back, Mr. Alex Terrell, thank you. On the Democratic side, Tom Lambert already told us he won't be coming back, but thank you for your short term. Mr. Jeff Galdenzi, thank you very much. Mr. Joe Siebert, thank you. Mr. A.V., I've just many a times with the Cindy Parham, thank you for your many years. I believe we started together along with my friend Joe Vergara. Thank you for the many years of service. And Mr. Bill Gerber, thank you for your many years of service on the RTM. And it's been a joy and pleasure to be with all of you. It's a little bittersweet for me tonight, but thank you all. And I'll make a motion to adjourn. Representative Woke, thank you all. Have a great night.